So for a better part of a year, DJI has been absolutely knocking the competition out of the water with their pocket-sized cameras. Now just before the holiday season's up, I wanted to talk about the DJI Osmo Action and the DJI Osmo Pocket, and which one's better for you. Let's talk about it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes.
Okay, so to put everything into context, what you're about to see other than this little part right here was filmed with either the DJI Osmo Action or the Pocket. And I filmed it all at 2.7K at 50 frames per second, but when we're inside, it's going to be filmed at 24 frames per second. Now I filmed the action sequences at 50 frames per second so I can slow down if needed, and it's going to be filmed in 2.7K because I'm just not a fan of DJI's compression in 4K. It's just slow and hard to work with. Now you can make proxy files, which I've done at 4K at 60 frames per second with the DJI, but it's still slow and you still have to render the files, and I'd rather just film at 2.7K and export at 4K. We'll get into all that in another video, so let's just switch it out. Alright, so we're back here. Let me show you what I'm dealing with. The DJI Osmo Pocket right there. We have the microphone attached. And there's the Action. The Action, the Pocket. Now with the Pocket I can't turn too much because the microphone is going to get stuck in the shot. So we got to keep it about right here. The two devices share a plethora of the same features such as 4K at 60 frames per second, time-lapse features. They both connect to the DJI Mimo app and that 1/2 sensor, but they differ in their uses. Now with the Pocket, because it's a mechanical gimbal, it's going to have a neck. And because it has a neck, it's going to be a little bit more prone to breaking, whereas the Action's going to be built like a rock. But the Action is just tough. Built like a rock. And speaking of rocks, the Action uses what DJI is calling rock steady stabilization. Now this is electronic stabilization, but it works very, very well. So a second difference that people don't really talk about is the lenses. Now, as I said before, they both use that 1/2 sensor. However, the Action has a 145-degree field of view, which is about a 20mm focal length with an f2.8 lens, whereas the Pocket here has an 80-degree field of view, which is about a 26 to 28mm focal length with an f2 lens. Okay, so what this means is the Action's gonna have a wider field of view, so everything's gonna be focused at all times with that f2.8 aperture, whereas the Pocket here is gonna have a more intimate field of view. Are you still focused? And an f2 aperture means you're gonna have a slightly shallower depth of field, which in short, everything's going to be a little bit tighter and a little bit brighter. Now, in addition to being able to gather a little bit more light with the Pocket, you have the ability to set, track, and separate focus because it does have that f2 aperture, and you have a chance at a slightly more blurry background if that is what you're going for. I'm trying to see if I get close enough, maybe you can notice it. A tiny, tiny bit. But it is what it is. Now, to backpack with being able to track yourself using the DJI Osmo Pocket, it's like having a little camera person in your pocket, and it's going to add more dynamics to your videos, especially if you're filming yourself or you're vlogging. Look at this. It works. It works. I don't want to say it works fantastic because it is a contrast-based autofocus system, but it works well enough, especially for the price point of sub $400. Back to it. Now, this isn't to say that DJI Osmo Action doesn't hold its own in the vlogging category, because it certainly does. It is the first of its kind to have a front-facing screen as well as a big old bright black one. Back one. What? So they both have slow motion abilities. The DJI Osmo Action, however, has the ability to go up to 240 frames per second, whereas the Osmo Pocket caps out at 120 frames per second, both in full HD. So one thing that tends to go overlooked when discussing these two devices, which it shouldn't for me because it's winter almost everywhere I'm at, it's the operating temperature. Now, the DJI Osmo Pocket has kind of what you'd expect, which is a 0 to 40 degrees Celsius, or I think that's 32 degrees to 104 degrees in freedom units, whereas the DJI Osmo Action, on the other hand, can go all the way down to negative 10 degrees Celsius, which means that has a recommended operating temperature all the way down to 14 degrees, which is crazy for me. In fact, I've been taking it out when it's only cold out, and the battery life surprises me. In fact, when we went to go film that snowscape video, I used one battery in lasts about an hour, which is surprising to me. I'm just so used to changing up batteries and cycling through. So let me just add on to the battery point. The DJI Osmo Pocket has one fixed in battery, whereas the Action, you can change out batteries to your pleasing. Now, this is one of those devices where third-party batteries actually work pretty well. Now, speaking of third-party, both devices have a plethora of first and third-party accessories that we'll go through in another video. Both devices share what DJI calls Cinelite D, which is their professional log. I don't use this often because it's noisy from what I have seen. We'll do another video going over that as well. They also both have Wi-Fi compatibilities. However, with the DJI Osmo Pocket, you're going to need to buy the adapter for it, whereas the Action, it's built in. Alright, so I apologize if I'm jump cutting, but I would like to wrap up by saying both of these devices are great. You can use the DJI Osmo Pocket for action stuff if you have the right accessories, and you can use the Action for cinematic stuff or vlogging. In short, they can both hit that same target audience well, but they are such different cameras that it's all personal preference. I don't want to be that guy to say that, but it is. So I just want to break it down in the most simple way possible. The DJI Osmo Action has a lower operating temperature. You can change out the batteries, and you have a wider field of view. So if you're going to be doing more action stuff, go with it. It is one solid piece, so you don't need to buy a whole lot of accessories. Whereas the DJI Osmo Pocket would be geared more for cinema stuff. Like if you want more cinematic YouTube videos. There's a market for that. I'm just saying. I will leave you with my personal preference on which one I would choose. Honestly, I would prefer the DJI Osmo Pocket in most scenarios just because it has that f2 aperture, which is more useful in low light for what I'm doing. The mechanical gimbal, to me, it's fantastic because I could just take it anywhere I want and always have stable footage. That being said, the DJI Osmo Action is my go-to right now because it's so incredibly cold out, and the Pocket just dies right away. When I went to go film that video, it chewed through battery. 3 minutes, I got 20% loss. So yes, that will do it for us. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Goodbye.